In today's video, we're going to go over some of the worst programmers from Reddit, some terrible decisions that they've made, some bad code that they've released, some sad ones that they've caused, and we're going to react to it. Let's get right into it. Here's the first one. The previous senior dev I worked with. His code was pretty awful, and my supervisors told me to treat his code as a junior dev's, when I am the junior dev. When he left, we were a little too happy. I got assigned his project, and the web application he was building flat out didn't work. We still weren't sure how in the world he was showing the customers how the app worked since it didn't at all. I spent 3 days going through it, deleting probably 50% of it due to 50% being completely useless. But how useless, you ask? A basic example of one of many things I came across. A function whose only purpose was to make a boolean the opposite value. He did the whole if it is true, make it false, and if it is false, make it true statement, and then he would return the opposite value. When returning a value did nothing, so I changed it to make value equals not value. That's just the easiest and least complicated to explain example I came across. I've worked with a senior dev like this, a senior dev whose code was very janky. The code itself looked like it was written by a first-year student. And on top of that, the deployment of his projects that he owned were extremely manual. They weren't even off of the master or main branch. It was off of a his name, let's just say my name. Let's just say that I'm this engineer. It was off of his branch, and it was something like Don Julio Alpha. That's the actual release branch. So even though you had the main and master branch and the pipeline was working through there, for some reason you had to do a manual deploy off of this Julio M deploy branch. But on top of that, you had to deploy to a certain node because it only worked there. Oh man, it was awful. When that guy quit, and the thing is, I thought this guy was the coolest guy ever because he's the first person I met that had a Tesla. This was 6 years ago. This was right after college. I had never seen a Tesla in real life. I know Elon's a piece of shit. I know Teslas are not a good deal. I would not get a Tesla now. But back then, I thought Teslas were cool as hell. So this guy, the first person I met that had a Tesla, I thought it was so cool. He showed me it one day, and I thought, man, I'm gonna be like this guy one day. This is what it means to make it. And then as I became a better programmer, as I became more familiar with how good code looks and works like, I realized, wow, this guy really made himself valuable to the company by writing code so bad that he's the only one that knows how it works. So now he is valuable. We need him because if we lose him, then these 4 projects that he worked on, they're no longer going to work. Eventually he left. I'm not sure if he went to a different company or if he just took some time off. I think he did have something else lined up. I was a little glad that he left, but I do miss him. Yeah, he was a cool guy. He was a pretty cool guy. I'm just glad that he's no longer coding with us because his code was pretty ass. So that's what this reminds me of. Team of 10 developers. App out of nowhere started having tons of crazy intermittent issues. No one could figure out why. Dug through commit history for days, and one of our developers had uncommented a 6-year-old line of code that said to do. Uncomment this. When asked why he did it, he said, because the code told me to. If the code is telling you to uncomment something, then you gotta uncomment it. This right here is a silly mistake that any one of us can make. There's no reason to be mad at this guy. He did exactly what the code told him to do. Honestly, this guy did nothing wrong. He did exactly what the code was telling him to do. In this case, the code commanded him to uncomment it. Usually you write code to tell a program what to do, but this guy knows what he's doing. Trapped us all in sprint planning for an extra hour and a half every sprint while he argued with himself. Oh man, this guy's the worst. See, this is why I don't even talk in sprint planning. I just stay quiet because I know that hour and a half is gonna, I know that hour and a half meeting is gonna be just an hour or maybe even just 30 minutes. Every team has a guy like this, but actually every team needs somebody like this. If you don't have somebody like this, then it's more than likely that your team services are not 100%. Your code is not optimized if you don't have somebody who's taking up extra time in sprint planning. Because if you have somebody on the business side or on the sales side taking up extra time, that's very different than an engineer taking extra time in a meeting, because an engineer is probably arguing with himself or with someone else on why something won't work. A business person like a product manager is taking up that extra time to tell you why they need this thing to work. So that's actually the worst case scenario, when you have a PM and a engineer or an engineering manager going back and forth on why something is not possible, but why it's needed and what the timeline will be. Hey, we can't wait until Q3 2029. We need it in Q2 2025, and that's 2 weeks away from now. Yeah, every team, every engineer that works in corporate has been in the situation where the meeting just runs on way too long. Don't want to name names or positions, but here's a couple of stuff that they did to annoy me. Ask me the same question over and over again. I'm talking about over 4 or 5 times. Ask me questions that they can easily Google themselves. We're a couple months in and did a lot of pull requests, but they still don't know how to make one. Let's go one by one here. Ask the same question over and over again. Had I've had this happen to me, and I've also done this to other people. When I was new to the industry, I definitely asked my mentor a lot of repeat questions. They were very kind about it, though. They never once seemed annoyed, never once made it seem like I was doing bad. But this is very annoying, and this is bad. I've been on the other side now where I have been asked a lot of questions and they're the same questions, and you just want to link them the Slack message that you sent them previously. I've done that before. They eventually got the hint. If you have a mentor or if you have an engineer that you have asked a lot of questions, look through your old messages first before you annoy them. Ask me questions that they can easily Google themselves. Try Googling a lot of your questions, unless it's yeah, definitely try Googling a lot of your questions. You'd be surprised what you could find on that's relevant to your very, very extremely specific and niche tech stack. Someone's probably tried to do what you're doing before. On top of that, check Slack. Slack is what we use. There's pretty much always a thread that has asked the same questions I have. So don't be that guy. Everybody hates that guy. Don't be that guy. Rick Owens in and did a lot of pull requests, but they still don't know how to make one. That's funny. So I think GitHub uses pull request. We use GitLab, and so we use merge requests. So I actually had no clue what a pull request was. When I was talking to some friends who work at a different tech company, they said, "Oh yeah, how to make a PR?" And I, what? No, a what? A pull request. I have to make a pull request. Well, what is that? So I've been this guy too. Pull request and merge request, they're the same thing. Definitely try to get better with Git. If you're familiar with Git, then that definitely makes you stand out a bit. I myself am not familiar with Git. I know exactly what I need to know, and I do fine. I've been doing fine for the last 6 years. Names all of his input parameters var or val. He'll probably name his first child var if it's a boy, val if it's a girl, Valeria if it's a girl. I think I've seen this practice too, where some people use the same default parameter names for a lot of their functions. This would get confusing to understand, but also if you do this every single time, then I know what to look for. I just know your coding style. So this actually might not be the worst one, because ultimately, if I'm reviewing your code all the time, I just know what to expect. Last one. At the end of the day, we all realized the worst programmer was the one inside us all along. There you have it. We've all been bad programmers. We've all worked with bad programmers. We've all been on both sides. So no matter what side you're on right now, keep getting better, keep doing what you need to do. You eventually you'll get to a point where it's doing your thing, and so long as it's not messing up your coworkers, messing up the pipelines or projects that you're working on, then I'd say you're good. We can always get a little better, and that's the point of life, just getting a little better. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I post a new video every Tuesday. I'm going back to Texas next week, so next week's video will be a little different. I'll think of what I want to do. It'll probably be a vlog. That's it. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Bye.